Good day, everyone. On behalf of QSG, I would like to welcome you to today's webinar. QSG is committed to providing up-to-date, useful, and credible information on the topics that you care about. My name is Chris Skangas, and I will serve as your moderator for today's webinar. Today's webinar will be approximately 60 minutes in length. There will be a 45-minute or so presentation, followed by a question and answer session. There will also be a one-day workshop that expands on the topics mentioned today. I will also be providing that information at the end of the webinar, and that 8-hour workshop will be on June 26th. If you have any questions today, please use the Q&A features at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and after the presentation, we can begin a question and answer session. So Ken, thank you for your time today. I'll turn it over to you for today's webinar.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you everybody for joining in. Essentially, I'll do a brief introduction of myself, talk a little bit about the New Product Development Foundation, go through an overview of the NPD process, and talk a little bit about implementation, and then go into Q&A. So my background, I trained as a mechanical engineer, went to business school and did some graduate study in engineering design. I spent the bulk of my career at Gillette and P&G. I started off working in product development on paper-made pens and spent much of my career there in the shaving world, helping to develop the Fusion, Venus, Mach 3 sensor razors, all of the shaving products that Gillette sells, and manage the product development group. I've also had technical roles at Keurig Dr. Pepper, working on K-Cup development, two big projects that were joint ventures, one with Coca-Cola, one with Budweiser. The Coca-Cola one was Keurig Cold, and the Budweiser joint venture was a separate company formed called DrinkWorks. I've also had consulting roles at American Safety Razor and Schick that dealt with private label product development, developing products for Walmart, Costco, CVS, and working with Koisha, which is a international automation supplier, one of the largest in the world, that had an American division on packaging automation. And I've also worked at a startup called ShaveLogic that did a very good product development exercise and wound up going bankrupt due to a inability to commercialize that new product success. Here's just a sampling of products that I've worked on over the years. I've probably done 50 to 100 product launches. I don't know if anybody has either seen or owned a Keurig Cold or a DrinkWorks machine, and that's bonus points for they have very small distribution after a significant investment by the organizations. And to get started, so product development it's very simple to theorize. It's essentially it's getting concepts to customers. People have ideas, develop concepts, and you have to get them to the customer. It's an idea. It gets lots of hard work and money, and if it's done well, it provides lots of money back to the organization. It's very broad and diverse. Much of my career has been about consumer packaged goods. There are many different industries that have some similarities to the process, but the details are grossly different. So if you're in defense, tech, big pharma, the process is different, and there's no one right way. It's not like tax accounting, building codes, or FDA training. That in that, if you're doing that type of training, there is the right way, and then there's not the right way. There's no nuances. Just a terminology reference, I'll be using the term initiative because some companies, their product is a service, their packaging, graphic, but they're all initiatives where you have to take an idea and commercialize it. They're all initiatives. This is a fairly common picture for product life cycle. If you've had any product development and marketing, it's a very standard training element, but it's every product will eventually, it has to be introduced. If it's successful, it will grow, have a life, and then it will eventually decline. Everything follows this curve. It may not have the exact profile. Sometimes a product will be introduced and it'll fly off the shelves initially, and then it will continue to grow and have a very long life before it starts to decline. Other times the product will be launched, there'll be a lot of fanfare, there'll be a lot of advertising, and then it'll just fizzle out and it'll decline. But eventually every product will hit its peak and eventually decline. Certainly you've seen, many products over the years, but certainly some big ones. Just to highlight that, the Peloton took off during the pandemic, and now it's just stumbling along. Whether it survives or gets acquired, we'll see. Newspapers and radios were essential elements of just day-to-day life that recently one of the kids saw somebody reading a newspaper and were like, could barely understand what they were doing. Why weren't they looking at their phone or iPad to get the news? I have a 13-year-old car that has never had the radio turned on. Software darlings, came on the scene and disappeared. MySpace, Alta Vista, Netscape, long gone. iPods were a big hit, peaked, disappeared, and have transitioned into your phone. BlackBerry didn't make the pivot. Companies essentially disappeared. A little future looking, one conversation I was in recently, people were talking about that car ownership is likely to go the way of the newspapers and the radio. That there are some people that love cars and want them and will have them because that's what they want. But most people want transportation, and if they can get transportation without owning cars, that's what the future will hold. And if that's the case, if you think about high schools, parking malls, downtown areas, parking lots aren't going to be the same. And it's not just products. If you look at the largest companies from 1900 with the largest companies now, industries that didn't exist have taken over. Companies that were all powerful in 1900 shell of themselves if they still exist. So what it comes down to is that no matter what your business, no matter what you have, no matter what you're selling, if you don't envision that this is the curve that you're going to be following and that you need to refresh your products, refresh your line, have additional offerings, and even acquire different companies, you will go and decline. When you look at this, the area over here in the bottom left is the NPD process. It's the work that has to be done that takes an idea, money gets spent, concepts are developed, and they're launched into a product introduction. And this is the world of new product development. Done well, you get a curve where you get a nice long product life cycle. Done less well, you may get to an introduction, but the company loses money on the launch and never makes it back. Again, just graphically, that no matter when you're doing a new product launch, doing an introduction, you always have to be thinking about the next one. And this activity in many places I've worked has started as soon as this launch has taken place. The company's working on the next one, even though it's a while before it's going to be launched. The work is being done because in a well-run company, they're going to realize they have to get to the next new product before decline. So what is new product development is a business survival mechanism. And what is a business but the income from its products and services? They're revenue streams that have to be regularly refreshed. And a good measure of company health is how much of the revenue and profits from your product line are from products that have been released, and I say in the last 5 years. It depends on the industry. If it's Boeing, it may be 10 years is the right number there. How much of their money is coming from the new planes? If it's a higher tech, faster turnover industry, it may be how much of your profit is coming from what's been released in the last 12 or 18 months. And if you don't have healthy turnover and new revenue and profits from what you've more recently released, and you're relying on the old reliables, you will eventually be a company in decline. Again, very, very simply, it's how do you get the right product at the right price at the right time to the right place. And the right place is now even more critical. The project I'm working on now is getting decimated with tariffs, that you may have thought you had your cost structure in place, you had good contract vendors, and all of a sudden your containers are landing and your price is doubling, and there is no profit from the new product that you've just launched. So just like no matter what you plan, no matter how you think through the risks, new things can come up and be a problem. I'm gonna pause right here for a second. Just the basics of product life cycle on initiatives, how important they are to continually innovate, and how important they are to your business, and just think for a minute. And so when you go back to work this afternoon, where is your organization? What are they doing? would you say they're world-class, or do they need to improve? So when you start to look at a process that every initiative, and I say follows the same development process, and I picked, just something simple, something complicated, but no matter what your business, how small or how big, it starts off with an idea that says, this is what we want to make, this is what we want to sell. And we have to figure out how to do it, how to get it out the door, how to get it validated, get it in the hands of customers so we have revenue coming in. And it's all the same, no matter how small or how large. That's the basic process. And certainly what quality presentation would be complete without a quote from Deming? And I'm a process person, so I firmly believe this, that if you can't describe what you are doing as a process, then you don't know what you're doing. And new product development is that way. And this is just a basic, this is what happens. You have an idea, it gets refined into a concept, it advances into a manufacturable design, it gets scaled up, and it gets launched. And it's fairly basic. I'm sure everybody I know has had an idea that is a good idea. Somebody has said, oh, you see an empty storefront? Wow, that'd be a great place for a coffee shop. Or you see a busy corner and you say, oh, that'd be a great place for a McDonald's. And then a few years later, you drive by there and you see the McDonald's there, and you go, oh, that was a great idea I had. Good ideas are the start. All of the hard work that goes through the stages for executing, refining, developing those good ideas is the hard part. There are many different models for how to do an NPD process. There's 7-step models, 9-step models, 11-step models, but essentially they all capture the same work. That new product development and commercialization is a process. How many stages in your process is not the key to success. It's, new product development. It's not buying a lottery ticket. It's not rolling the dice. Though some companies may operate that way, it's working the process. And one of the keys to that is managing the develop money as you go through that. You go through the progress and the success of the process, so that you have to make sure that you maintain the budget as you go, and that you execute the critical elements in each stage, and that's what delivers the results. So, and companies that continually go through the process and improve their process as they go, that leads to extended success. So, talking through, the process today, we're going to refer to this model and just have a little general thoughts on, an idea that may go through that process. So, example to talk through is Dyson vacuums came on the scene years ago, and they came out with what was perceived as a superior product, superior design, premium price that delivered premium performance. And they developed that brand, and that was their starting point for success, and they've had some branches off of that. But they also said, we need to have some new products, and they've branched off in different directions, but certainly one of them was uh, the hairdryer product. They said they decided that's an idea, and they took it into the concept stage. They didn't necessarily know when they started out exactly what they wanted, but they had the product development team had to do the market research to determine what is currently in the market, what are the demographics, all the market research of who buys hair dryers, how much they spend, what do they want. The product designers had to say, what do we have? We have, competency and small motor airflow technology that we can draw upon. And through constant iterations, they work their way to various prototypes that they kept testing and coming up, say, okay, here is our concept. It may have been a $25,000 hairdryer concept model that they were able to take to consumers and test it, and the result may have been something like their concept model was preferred 2-to-1 to the best-selling hairdryer out there, and they figured out that they could sell $100 hairdryer that cost them $25 to make, and the business side figured out they could sell probably 100,000 of these a year, and that was the concept that was developed. And then they moved in and said, okay, now we have to come up with a design that delivers that concept, that can be made for $25 and still delivers the product performance from that concept. So that product development team refined that design. They went back and forth with the marketing team to make sure they incorporated what the demographics wanted. They had to work the costs. They had to develop the design, and finally came up with a manufacturable design. And they were able to say, okay, that manufacturable design, those initial prototypes, test those. Did they deliver the same satisfaction with the demographic consumer, with the same buying proposition? And say, yes, it still performs. We can do it at that cost. We're able to scale it up. And you take it through the scale up process and the launch process. And that's, basically the way the process works. So the folks that are included in that, those new product development teams come from these disciplines. That there's a bunch of folks on the product supply side of the organization, and their responsibility is to deliver the product to the commercial organization. And the commercial organization is the one that represents the customer and the consumer. They have to make sure they provide the input to the product development side to make sure the proper costs are presented, the colors, features, what benefits the customer's looking for. All that has to be input into the product development folks. And then once that product is delivered, they have to make sure they have the processes in place to get sales and get the product into the hands of the consumer. Depending on the size of an organization, smaller companies people wear many hats. You might have one or two people doing all of these things in a small company. In a large company, it might be you have thousands of people in manufacturing, and you have representatives for manufacturing to the supply teams. So the definition of who is on that team is coming from these disciplines, because all of these need to be represented to provide their input to make sure that the all the proper information gets into the product, it gets scaled, and it gets back out the door. So one of the questions is, where do the new product development, where do new ideas come from? They don't just happen. There has to be a process for making that happen. So sources of ideas come from customers, suppliers, competitors. Some larger companies have people working in R&D just trying to figure out what is the next big thing, sometimes doing just raw research in larger companies, don't even know where it's going to be applied, but they're just doing research to see if see what emerges. The marketing folks have from their work with market research, people say, oh, I wish this was bigger, smaller, cheaper. I want different finishes. So all of that input comes in. Engineering and manufacturing, as they're doing their basic work on other projects, they are working on a past design, and they see ways they can turn two pieces into one piece and make a change and make the product cheaper, and that's a new innovation. There are ideation techniques for developing new ideas. There's basic brainstorming. There's Scamper is one. There are other proprietary tools. There are outside agencies. If you have a big checkbook and a deep pocket, you can hire people to come in and either run ideation workshops and develop new ideas, or you can pay them money, companies like IDEO, where you pay them to do the first part of it. And then but those are really very large, deep-pocketed organizations. But certainly, regardless of where your ideas are coming from and what ones get discovered but don't get advanced, you always want to have in place a best practice for maintaining a stable of next ideas. They don't always make the cut for the next round of products, but ideas come around, and they sometimes technology might change, the marketplace might change, and so you want to make sure that you have a system for storing and maintaining good ideas. And one idea that I worked on way back in was erasable ink pens. When the erasable, 5 years before erasable pens came out, the gentleman that was a chemist that developed the ink technology had it in his lab, and he would show it, he would make prototypes, he'd share it at the new product meeting, and there was, nope, we're not ready for it. It's not what we want to do. And finally, 5 years later, they said, time is right, and they went to the market with erasable pens. Wound up not being as successful. It's still around. They still sell some, but it never made it to the point where all ink was erasable. But just always wanted to make sure that ideas aren't thrown away. They're always saved and revisited to determine, what's next. Very critical part of new product development is the team formation for the new product development team. As a matter of fact, I would say over the years, from what I've seen in my experiences, this is the most critical part of successful new products, that the team has to have good functional skills to work together, have trust, make sure ideas can be explored, accepted, rejected, and focus on getting to the end result still has to take place. And I'll also pause for a second here to make a pitch for the QSG teaming seminar. I worked with one of their consultants many years ago and did several different classes, and then had the opportunity to take the team webinar, the 1-hour webinar a few weeks ago with Jim Leonard. And he is an excellent consultant with an excellent program, and it was an excellent refresher from something that I had been through many years past. So if anybody needs to be convinced that how critical the team formation is for new product development, or they need training for their organization, I would highly recommend Jim Leonard for that team training opportunity. But on your team, you have to make sure that all of the disciplines that are contributing to each stage of the product are represented and managed, and there's a process that gets regularly followed and reviewed, so that as the product is advancing, it's crystal clear what the expectations are for testing, spending money, delivering results, sticking to timelines. So any one of these pieces breaks down, it can derail what could have been a successful development project. So once you get that team together, the organization has decided, senior management has said, we like the idea of trying to develop a hair dryer. It seems like it fits in our portfolio. It will be a good augment to what we're currently doing. We have the competency. We think we can do it. We have the people on the team have the skills. The team has to put together, what is our timeline for expectation of doing that? And what is the budget that we're going to need to develop that? Because until there's some activity to advance a new product development project, it's just R&D, it's just exploration, it's just preliminary work. There's no plan to take that concept, that idea, and take it through the process. So when the team's decided, the idea's been confirmed to advance, management has said we're going to put resources, meaning people and money, against it. The team has to put together a preliminary timeline. Because as fuzzy as it may be, and as uncertain as the results may be, because it's new, it hasn't been done before, the folks that are on that team will likely know more about what needs to be done than anybody else, certainly within the organization. So they have to make estimates on how long it's going to take. They're going to have to make estimates on how much it's going to cost and put together an initial proposal. And that initial proposal, probably the only thing for certain about it is that it won't be, when it's done, it won't be exactly as proposed. They'll spend more money, they'll spend less money, it'll take more people, it'll take longer, there will be some good fortune, there will be some bad luck, but there has to at least be a starting point to put some stakes in the ground as to what we're going to be working to. So as you move into that concept phase and the team starts working, they have an expectation of what they're going to deliver and what the time and the cost of what they're going to deliver is. So the team starts working and iterating with the input from all of the disciplines that are there. The business and marketing folks say this has to be less than $100. We have to be able to, if our target market is, the demographics are females age 18 to 36 with long hair, we have to understand what they are looking for. We have to, the technical teams have to be able to say, can we get a motor that's going to fit into the space that we need, that's going to blow the volume of air, and how are we going to do that? All of those iterations are worked through design concepts and features for that hairdryer. Now with rapid prototyping, different approaches can be done to accelerate that. And with SurveyMonkey, graphics and pictures can be shown to folks in the demographics and say, what do you like these colors? Do you like how this shape is? Do you like where the on and off switch is? So all of those concepts can be refined and advanced and played off with, what it's going to cost us. What are the cost trade-offs? How fast can we do it? How certain are we that it's going to be liked? And all those iterations. The technical team will assess feasibility. There might be a desire that, we would like this to weigh 6 ounces. That's what demographics does. The feasibility may be, we can't get you a hair dryer that's going to deliver the heat and the volume of air that is going to weigh less than 1.1 pound, 6 ounces. So all of those trade-offs work their way into what is the concept. And as that's going on, the risks are analyzed. What's going to happen if we don't deliver in the time period? Are we going to be able to hit the budget? And it's a constant source of tension, which defines why the criticality of the team function is so important, because it is a lot of hard work. It is a lot of stress. There's a lot of budget and timing constraints. And that's why it's so critical. The other piece that comes into play, and I refer to this as the preliminary activity of future stage requirements. So it may be that you have, as the team is looking down the road and they develop confidence in their design, they're ready to move forward with recommendations on how to make pots and pick contract suppliers and do consumer testing. They may hit a stumbling block that as they look at scale up, they've allocated 12 months to scale up from completed design to the volume that they need for launch to build the equipment to get through the scale up process. And it may turn out that most of it can be done in the 12-month time frame, but that there might be one piece of assembly equipment that has an 18 to 24-month lead time. And you either have to change the scale up timing to be 18 to 24 months, or you have to start and make some risk decisions to allocate some funds to order the assembly machine before you've completely proven out the design in order to make sure you can hit your 18-month time period. So there are multiple instances of this always coming up anywhere through the stage processes, but you always have to make sure that you bring visibility to those things that could delay either from a cost or a timing perspective, and make sure that they're visible. There's a risk assessment done, and the organization decides to spend the money and make the investment to move forward. So as you're going through the stages and you've laid out your requirements for what is determined to be success for the concept stage, you get to the stage review. And that becomes critical to determine, has the team met their goals for the timing, cost, everything that's been laid out in their plans. So the stage review process, it's making sure that you get the stakeholders, the senior management folks that are the sponsors, they're spending the money, they've appointed the team members. They're the ones that are responsible to reporting up the organization that we've delivered a new product that's going to continue making the company successful, which is what they're there for. The objectives have to be clear, and that has to be how well have they hit the milestones to this point, plus what do the milestones look like going forward. So certainly, whatever your timeline budget estimates were at the beginning of the process, you should be able to make better estimates at the first stage review. So the expectation is at that first stage review, you will be sharing updated timelines and budgets to either demonstrate where you've done work to confirm that you're on track, or because you've done the work, you've identified that there are items that need to change some of the budgetary targets. You get the stakeholders together, they review the progress, they determine whether everything was met, questions they may have, roadblocks are identified. Hopefully they supply the extra resources needed. If you say, hey, we need 3 more quality engineers or 2 more manufacturing engineers because we're hitting some roadblocks and we don't want to be delayed. And that's their role. So that's the job of the senior management and the stakeholders to make sure that those items are advancing and they're going to be able to deliver up to their senior managers that the programs are on track. And that there, essentially, every discipline needs to present their specific goal. I'm going to speed through this because a few minutes past where I wanted to be, but it's essentially every discipline has to demonstrate what their role was up to this point, what their role is going forward, and in a few brief slides demonstrate that they have delivered that in their discipline against the competencies. So everything relative to timing, performance, budget, business gets presented, reviewed, confirmed, and then advances to the next stage. And this was intended to be my last slide. I knew we weren't going to have enough time to go through all of it, but through these stages, that is the work that needs to get done, confirmed, advanced. So a few minutes longer than I wanted to be, but so I'm going to stop right there and I'm going to turn it back to Chris. So thank you for listening.
Great. Thank you, Ken. Thank you for the great presentation. I just want to remind everyone that the chat is disabled. So if you have any questions or any comments for Ken, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. We'll give everyone a couple minutes. If you have any questions or comments for Ken, now's the time to do so. Please put them in the Q&A feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Thank you, Ken. That was a great presentation. I'll also be putting the link. I'll send out the link as well for the full day class to expand on these topics. I would also like to add, if anyone has questions for Ken that you would like to take offline, I can definitely connect you directly with Ken to continue any conversations as well. Just want to make sure the Q&A is working here. If someone doesn't mind, maybe throwing in a great presentation into that Q&A so I can, just to confirm it works. Thank you. Great. Thank you for that. Oh, you're getting a bunch of great presentations. Presentation was great. Very good presentation. Great presentation. Great presentation, Ken. Ken, great presentation. Thanks. All right. Well, I'll give everyone a minute or so. If they have any questions, please use the Q&A feature. If not, we can end a little bit early here, Ken.
Thank you very much. Thanks for putting it together, Chris. And I will catch up with you later.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.